JD Vance spoke to the press briefing room about what took place in Minneapolis and the killing. Some are using the term the murder, some are using the term assassination. Those are not legally accurate terms right now, but socially and colloquially, those are terms that are being applied. Of 37-year-old Renee Good, as she was shot through her window and windshield of her car as she was attempting to drive away. JD Vance, of course, just a completely disgusting person, lacking all gravitas and charisma, and says, listen, this was a legitimate law enforcement operation. And it's very important to understand that saying that does not actually confirm anything one way or the other about the shooting. So listen to what he says, and then I'm going to explain what I mean.
On duty, or has he been placed on leave, on administrative leave? And what really was the target of the operation on Wednesday? Of the ICE operation on Wednesday?
Well, first of all, it was a legitimate law enforcement operation. We were going door to door to try to find criminal illegal aliens and deport them from the United States of America, because if you come to our country illegally in violation of our immigration laws, then we have the mandate, and in fact, we have the legal duty to enforce those immigration laws. Whether he's been placed on administrative leave, I don't know the answer to that question. I'd refer it to the Department of Homeland Security, and they can follow up. I will say, look, I would appreciate everybody saying a prayer for that agent. Look, in the past 6 months, he has been hit twice by a motor vehicle. One time, the first time, it led to over 30 stitches and very serious injuries to his legs. This is a guy who's actually done a very, very important job for the United States of America. He's been assaulted. He's been attacked.
Yeah. Okay. So the officer who killed Renee Good is the victim, of course, in all of this. A couple different things. Number one, JD Vance says this was a legitimate law enforcement operation. Unfortunately, that says nothing about the underlying legality of the shooting. I'll give you an example. A traffic stop executed by a police officer can be completely legitimate. They observed an individual allegedly committing a traffic violation. They lit him up, pulled him over, and asked for ID. It's a legitimate traffic stop. That doesn't mean every single thing the officer does or might do during the traffic stop would be legal. For example, you can't unreasonably detain people during a traffic stop for hours for no real reason. Even if you want to get a drug dog out to sniff around the car, there is some limited time that you have to do that. And so the traffic stop could be legitimate, but it doesn't mean everything you do during the traffic stop is legitimate. Similarly, the law enforcement operation being carried out in Minneapolis could very well be legitimate, although I'm going to come back to that. That doesn't mean that any action undertaken by any involved officer is de facto legitimate, like, for example, shooting Renee Good through the window and then windshield of her vehicle. Second, is the operation legitimate? And what I mean by that is, JD says they were going door to door looking for illegal aliens. Is that actually a legitimate law enforcement operation? Masked men are going door to door and looking to seize people with no warrant or proof of criminality. Is it a legitimate law enforcement operation? We're not going to adjudicate that here, but I raise it only as a question. I do not have higher hopes for JD Vance. He is one of the most deplorable and disgusting people that I have ever seen involved with government. But even the basics of what he is saying here really leave a lot to be desired. Now, JD Vance also never misses an opportunity to attack the media. And that is exactly what he did during this appearance in the White House press briefing room.
Being part of that network justify being shot?
Well, being part of the network doesn't justify being shot, but ramming an ICE officer with your car, that's what justifies being shot. It's not a good thing, by the way, but when you...
Now, remember that the ICE officer was not rammed with the car. We have the video. They are rewriting history.
Somebody to engage in self-defense, it's almost a preposterous question.
How could it be self-defense if the guy wasn't hit by the car and refused medical treatment, saying that he was fine?
I'm not saying that funding some of this stuff justifies capital punishment. Nobody would suggest that. The reason this woman is dead is because she tried to ram somebody with her car, and that guy acted in self-defense.
Understand that the video does not suggest that she was trying to ram anybody.
That is why she lost her life, and that is the tragedy. Now, there may be other violations of the law and other penalties that are associated with those violations of the law. For example, if you are funding violence against our law enforcement officers, I'm not a prosecutor. My guess is that's
all right. Anyway, that has nothing to do with this incident. Now he's talking about other hypotheticals. Finally, from JD, he makes a statement that is so, dare I say, Kafkaesque that it really strains credulity.
In the red tie, yeah.
Vice President Vance, I wanted to ask, what's your message to far leftist agitators who feel emboldened to obstruct ICE activity in Minnesota and around the country?
Well, I think they shouldn't feel emboldened because now they have an assistant attorney general who is going to prosecute and investigate their fraud and their violence more aggressively than it has ever been investigated in the United States of America. We are doing so much to try to find the financing networks and the domestic terrorism networks that legitimate this violence, that fund this violence, and that, of course, engage in the violence. These people should not feel emboldened because they have, for the first time, maybe in American history, an administration that is not going to tolerate political violence of any kind from anywhere.
For the first time in American history, JD says, we have an administration that won't tolerate political violence of any kind from anybody. They pardoned 1,500 January 6th rioters. You are quite literally saying we tolerate political violence, and we tolerate a lot of it. You know, the more I think about J.D. Vance as a potential 2028 candidate, forget for a second, I don't know how many of you saw, Clavicular pointed out that the facial width to height ratio of J.D. Vance's face is a disaster, and that'll really hurt him if he tries to run. He really is an intellectual smurf and is going to be, I believe, completely unable to properly articulate why anybody should vote for him. So I increasingly think he is unlikely to successfully be a presidential candidate. Thanks for watching. Check out another one of our videos and make sure to subscribe so YouTube keeps our content in your feed. And if you prefer audio, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or Apple.